Thanks very much for attending the webinar that we're holding today on leveraging your investment in Cisco technology. I'm Reardon Maynard. I'm CEO of Touchbase, which is a strong partner of Cisco's. The idea of today is really to try and take some of the things that Touchbase sees in the clients that we work with and in the market in general, and give you some understanding of where we see opportunities to add value or release more value from the investments that you make, specifically in Cisco's collaboration and contact center technology. And so the intention of today is to run through very quickly and pretty high level some of the areas that we think companies are perhaps not doing enough to take advantage of the benefit that they could find in the technology they've invested in. So that basically is what we're going to cover. Touchbase, I don't want to spend too much time on it, but we're a global technology services company. We focus specifically on collaboration and contact center technology, and have worked in the communications field for the last 20 years. We've got offices across Europe, USA, and Asia Pacific, and that work has sort of taken us into about 60 countries, working with over 1,000 organizations, both national and multinational. And we're pretty passionate about collaboration, communication, and customer contact, and how companies can do more with the technology available to them to improve their organization. And that's why we want to talk about this topic. It's extremely common in technology generally, but specifically in our area of technology, to find companies spending an awful lot of money, millions and millions of dollars, to invest in incredible functionality and capability, and then to only use a tiny percentage of it. And so this is mainly to look at a couple of areas that we think there are some quick wins for you, especially if you're currently using Cisco's collaboration and or contact center technology. The outcome for today was really to, I think, to not go into too much detail, but to make you think. And if you see something that is of interest to you or you think could be valuable to you, then of course you can talk to us. We'd love you to talk to Touchbase about coming and helping you define that and see what sort of solution we can put together to help you leverage it. Or alternatively, your existing partner, if they are capable of doing what you need them to do. So that's really what you should expect. Just a couple of ideas, I guess, that we think you should be thinking about around leveraging more from your Cisco technology. So what do we see? Touchbase is in multiple markets, speaking to many companies across the world and working with them on a day-to-day basis. And so we get to see what things are getting to the top of the agenda at a sort of CIO or CTO or COO level, what technologies they involve, what value they can bring, and what actions people are taking to take advantage of some of these trends. None of these will be rocket science to you or brand new to you, but just to give you some idea of what we're seeing, a huge interest in true unified communications, which, just to be clear, is really the bringing together of disparate communications tools like voice, video, instant messaging, voice messaging, into one single interface, which the user can use to access and move around between those tools seamlessly, and ultimately improve the way in which they communicate and improve their personal contactability. The second area, which is very significant, is video or visual communication, and companies looking at not just major video implementations like telepresence, but more a cohesive, pervasive video strategy across the organization, from device, whether that's a tablet or a desktop or a smartphone, all the way through to boardroom, which is more around the sort of telepresence type of technology. But major focus on video and how you can embed that into your overall collaboration strategy. The third area is cloud, which is no surprise to anyone on this webinar. It is the buzzword, I guess, of the moment, but the principles are sound. You know, this concept that perhaps the technology, the tools, the functionality can be delivered more effectively outside of your own data centers and managed more effectively outside of your own enterprise than perhaps it is today. The fourth area is bring your own device, which is developing extremely quickly, driven obviously by the explosion in personal stroke business devices like the iPad or the Android devices or smartphones generally, and this desire that users have now to bring their own device to the office, and their expectation that you or you as an organization should be able to deliver the applications to that device is creating a lot of pressure on IT organizations. And then the fifth area is enterprise social compute, which is not as obvious yet to most organizations, but it's certainly coming up the rankings in terms of importance and gaining a lot of traction around companies who are looking to work out how to leverage modern, the most recent communications tools and embed them into a single interface that companies can use to manage documentation, specific business process, general team collaboration, and ultimately collaboration with customers. So those are the five certainly key trends that we're seeing in the world that we live in, which is predominantly collaboration world. And they translate into Touchbase working with its clients around these technologies: call processing, video processing, IM processing, web conferencing, audio conferencing, document share, presence, your UC clients, enterprise social software, and of course virtualization, all of which are key component parts of any true collaboration solution for an enterprise. And it doesn't matter whether you've got 50 people or whether you've got 50,000 people. These are the things that we believe you should be thinking about, and how they tie together to deliver a seamless experience to your user community, regardless of what device or what operating system they are using. From a value perspective, of course, we are all under immense pressure. From a fiscal point of view, companies are looking always to reduce their OPEX. There is a huge focus on efficiency, on productivity, whether that relates to individual efficiency and productivity or to process efficiency and productivity. There's a lot of pressure on companies and IT departments to improve the user experience. You know, your users go home and they have access to extremely rich collaboration tools, and they come to the office and they've got a handset on the desk, and then over here on their desktop they've got an IM client, and over here they've got something that they do audio conferencing on, and very disparate experience from a communications perspective, and there's a lot of pressure to improve that. Security is high on the agenda. Bringing the real estate footprint down for companies is high on most companies' agenda. Bringing down travel, both from a cost perspective and a quality of life perspective, is important to companies, and obviously improving customer experience, making companies more easy or simpler to deal with, is always on the agenda, and some of these technologies I've just mentioned can have a huge impact on those critical business areas. And so what we're seeing, what we're going to talk about today is some pretty simple things that have, I mean, of course, they don't fix everything on this list. They don't meet all of the trends we've talked about or cover all the technologies, but there are some really simple things that we strongly recommend you look at within your organization to make a difference. You know, whether that's reducing your costs, improving your user experience, getting more out of people, traveling less, whatever it might be. You know, there are some things that are quite simple to do if you've got the right infrastructure in place, and we see lots of companies not doing them. So, cellular on net, you know, this basically means bringing as much of your mobile activity onto your corporate network when it's possible. And of course, that's possible when someone's in a corporate facility. It is now possible using VPN technology to achieve when they are in somewhere else, like a Starbucks. And it can have radical cost benefits, which I'll talk about in a minute. The second is audio conferencing, and again, I'll talk about that in detail, but that's the principle of saying, you know, I've invested hundreds of thousands or millions into my corporate network. I've made it capable of carrying voice perfectly across the area that I need it to. Why do I then go to a third party to process the audio traffic for my conferencing? Now, you might not, but the majority of companies we come into contact with do. And so they've made major investment over here, and it's illogical for them to then process calls over here with someone else. The UC client component is really about saying, how do we bring together disparate tools? How do we deliver them to any device on any operating system anywhere to our users so that they have consistent tools, consistent ability to communicate, and the choice of how they do that from a device perspective. And then the last thing I just want to touch on is the major features in the recent upgrade from Cisco to version 9, which will be relevant to any of you that are using the Call Manager platform for call processing, video processing, and so I'm going to touch on that, not again in much detail, but hopefully it will be of some value to you. So kicking off with cellular activity, as I've said, this is really about leveraging your investment in your corporate network, which is capable of carrying voice, and to deliver to your users an invisible service around what network they're using, whether it's the cellular network or your own corporate network, but bringing it on to your network whenever possible without user intervention. So without requiring the user to make the decision to do that. And the reason for that is that 70% of your mobile activity occurs within your own facilities. So if you're spending $1 million a year, $700,000 of that $1 million is likely to be spent whilst someone is within your own facilities. Those are statistics from Vodafone, one of the largest cell phone carriers in the world. If you are running a multinational business, or your executives or people are traveling overseas, roaming charges will form a vast share of your spend on cellular. And it is the one piece of your cellular spend that you can't control. The user does not control when a call comes into them. And therefore, and not only that, you are, I would say, overcharged for those calls when they come into you in an overseas market. Now, hugely valuable for Europe, which, if you're traveling between countries, the roaming agreements between network carriers mean that you're spending a lot of money. Hugely valuable for Asia Pacific. But of course, also if you're in the US and traveling overseas to Mexico, Latin America, and Asia Pacific or Europe, you will be seeing big roaming charges. If you do this properly, you can also deliver true single, I've put single number reach, but true single anything reach. And whether it's IM, whether it's voice messaging, whether it's a call, or whether it's a video event, having the user on your network with a consistent set of tools allows them to deliver to any party that wants to get hold of them one single number or one single address for them to do that, and that's valuable. And lastly, it gives them central control, or gives you central control over routing of activities. So you can choose how things are processed and where they're processed. So that's why we think you should do it. It'll save you money. It'll radically improve your user experience, and it gives you more control over where things go over your network. How do you do it? This is probably one of the simplest. If you've invested in your network, if it's ready for voice, if you've got a decent wireless network within your corporate facilities, and you've got the latest version of UCM, basically it is a service activity or a setup activity to get all of your smartphone and tablets within the enterprise onto your network, and then to educate the users on how to do that, how to use it, how to capitalize on it. But it is immediately available to you, and the outcome you'll see is at least half of your mobile data and voice charges, 50 to 75%, if not more, reduction in your roaming fees, seamless user experience, and eventually, we believe, the removal of the conventional handset, which is a major cost for companies when you're looking to refresh technology. So those are the reasons we think cellular on net is key, easy to achieve, and not enough companies are doing it. Audio conferencing falls into the same bucket. Again, it's very straightforward. If you've invested in your corporate network, if it's capable of carrying voice traffic, you should be running your audio conferencing over that network. The costs to use external providers of audio is significant and variable. You can't control it. And so we would strongly suggest that you leverage the investment in your voice capable network, that you continue with an external or a cloud-based web service like WebEx, which is the service that we would always recommend, and that you bring the audio component of the call or the web conference onto your own network. Now, of course, to do that, you need to invest in some bridging technology, and you can choose what that might be. We would recommend Cisco's Meeting Place products for that, and they can be integrated seamlessly into the WebEx client, the web client for WebEx, so that the user experience is seamless and it's actually invisible. They don't know what they're using to process the audio, but what you know, and what from a technology or an IT department's perspective, you again control the routing of those calls, and you can bring as much of it on net. You can also keep external audio if you need to balloon the users on any given web conferencing event. If, for instance, your average event is 5 to 10 users, but you do a company meeting once a quarter where you have 50,000, then of course you don't want to size your on-net audio bridge to 50,000. You need to use an external party for that. But for day-to-day stuff, for 95% of what you do, you can do it on your own network, and you'll remove all or most of the external costs associated with the audio conferencing. The ROI is incredibly compelling on audio conferencing on net. From a UC perspective, clearly people are familiar with the products available in this area. Jabber is Cisco's UC client. You know, it is the client that they've chosen to provide users with the ability to access all of their communications tools from one interface, from one client, and to move between them, whether that's video or whether it's instant messaging or whether it's voice, and to move into WebEx meetings seamlessly, bring people into conversations, whatever it might be the user is trying to do, they can do it from one interface. And that's hugely powerful, especially with the shift from the desk to more mobile devices, you know, smartphones and tablets specifically. And so, again, very simple to introduce to organizations. You know, if you have the infrastructure in place, if you have the licensing necessary, then to introduce Jabber to all of your users is very quick, very simple, and the application itself is very intuitive. And so, whilst you may require some education to the user community, it isn't like rolling out a whole new set of handsets where, you know, training is very important and very necessary. With something like Jabber, it's just an instinctive, very well designed application or interface that users will embrace very quickly. And doing that will give your users a consistent and seamless user experience, regardless of whether they're using an iPad, an iPhone, an Android device, or of course their desktop or their desk phone. And so it is simple. It gives you also, looking forward, much more opportunity to control the routing of their activity, which is very important when you start to look at video on mobile devices. If the routing is not controlled and is by default going over the cellular network, then your costs are going to balloon on cellular. And so control over routing for your users to access these very valuable tools, we believe, is fundamental to keeping control of your cost base. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on UCM or call managers, communication managers, new features with Cisco's release of version 9. Now, I'm not a technical person, and therefore this presentation isn't technical, but clearly Touchbase has a lot of specialists around this product. We have product specialists around this product and all products that we take to market, and who will be very happy to talk to you more about what Cisco is doing with their applications from a UCM perspective. But the focus, as is logical and sort of feeds into some of the things I've already said, is to improve the video capability of the platform, to allow more clients and endpoints to access the platform, regardless of what those clients are, regardless of what the endpoints or devices are, and regardless of what operating system they are running on. There's a huge focus in the release around mobility and giving or making the mobile experience completely identical to the desktop experience, whether you're using iPads or whether you're using Android devices or desktops, or indeed a web browser that has been enabled with Cisco's collaboration functionality. Very significant focus on customer collaboration and how we, being Touchbase, and you, being the end user or the client, can start to embrace some of these, what have largely been internal technologies, like presence and IM and click to call, and video, how we can start to bring those into the relationship with the customer. And so there's a major focus on that in version 9, the release of version 9, which we will be very happy to walk you through. I'm glad to say a huge focus on licensing, which has been a major area of concern for Cisco collaboration users. Cisco have done a huge amount of work in improving the license packaging at an enterprise level and the management of those licenses. And so, again, that is something that requires a deep dive, which, if you haven't already taken a look, we would strongly suggest that you do. And then the overall evolution of the platform is a major part of the version 9 release, which tied into that is the user experience. So whilst there is still significant focus on the processing of communication events, call events or video events or IM events, there is also a major focus on the user experience, which certainly from our perspective is very refreshing and vital, we think, if the product is going to stay relevant as the user pushes more and more and has more and more control and expectation over what they receive from from your company as an employee or as a customer. So those are the major themes within the release. We would be very happy to walk you through in major detail any of those, and obviously help you work out how they can be applied to you and your organization to drive some tangible business outcome. So don't hesitate to contact us if you'd like us to do that. And so that sort of wraps up what we wanted to talk about. It's a very quick webinar. You're busy people. Really wanted to try and stimulate some thought around where you might be able to draw more value out of your technology. You might be doing all of the things we've talked about, in which case we would say you are one of very few. Most organizations we deal with have huge scope for improvement in the way they're leveraging the technology, and importantly, some real significant wins from a business perspective around reducing cost or improving the user experience, and in some cases, reducing that cost completely invisibly to the user, which is an important consideration because it means you don't have to go out to 50 or 50,000 people and tell them this is how you're now going to be doing things. Behind the scenes, you can just make the changes required, and those changes will have a radical impact on the way you control communication activity on your network or off your network, and the costs associated with it, which fundamentally is an important part of Touchbase's job, is to try and help you do that as efficiently as possible. So this is a recording of the webinar, and therefore we won't have any live Q&A, but please don't hesitate to contact us if you've got any questions about any aspect of your collaboration or contact center strategy, or the way that you're executing things, either globally, regionally, or locally, or the way that you're supporting the technology or optimizing the technology you've already got. Those are the areas that we specialize, we're extremely passionate about, and we'd love to help you with. So thanks very much for your time. I hope this has been useful, and look forward to working with you in the future.